I know it's been a busy day for many of you, but we are very glad that you all have been able to take your time and be a part of DRM. We also have our resource person, Dr. Alexander George, for the day, who's going to speak on the topic today. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining. So, what is DRM? DRM, which is titled Deborah Rice Movement. It's it was started especially during the lockdown. The Deborah Rice Movement, Life Connect. It was started in order to answer various questions that many people do not have answers for. Those questions are very vital for people to live a solid life that is based on Christian principles, so that they can live a life of meaning and purpose. So that is what DRM has been doing so far. In the past few months, especially during the lockdown, DRM has been able to address a wide range of topics that helps a person think, reason, and also strengthen their belief in the Lord Jesus Christ. So, in case if you're new today and you're here for the first time, we'll be putting up our links of our YouTube channel. Please do take your time to go and have a look at the work that has been done through DRM for God's glory. We'll also be putting our helpline number. Our helpline number will be put up in the chat box. Please do have a look at it and also share it with your friends, who have issues and who have struggles and who need a listening ear, so that they can connect and talk and pray and benefit their life through the help of the DRM that is provided by DRM. So I will be putting a bunch of links, the WhatsApp link, YouTube link, and also the helpline number. Please do make sure that you use it well for the benefit of God's kingdom. And also today we'll be talking, or we'll be listening and discussing more on the topic which is called Dowry, the face of exploitation. A bunch of you have joined today, and it's early. You joined early. Thank you very much. So this dowry is one practice, that alarms various families in our country. Many people think that if it is settled well, everything goes well, but actually it brings a lot of deadly and unpleasant consequences, and very rarely it brings pleasant consequences, but most of it is really deadly. So as a Christian, how do we deal with this practice, or how do we answer questions related to this practice? In the Bible, we see that it's a man who pays the bride price and everything. So how do we deal with this? So in order to enlighten us and to shed more light on these questions and these doubts that we have regarding dowry, we have Dr. Alexander George with us. Dr. Alexander George is a father of two daughters, and he is a person who endorses the no dowry policy, is what I heard and what I read about him. So, a few words about Dr. Alexander George. Dr. Alexander George has a PhD in agriculture. He started his career as an agriculture officer and moved on to be a social scientist in rice research. For several years, he provided leadership for the human resource development activities of the Kerala Agricultural University, where he served for over 33 years. He has been trained at the International Rice Research Institute, Manila, and the Haggai Institute, USA. During his tent-making career, he has been pastoring house churches, and for over 40 years has been the most sought person to be a mentor, to be a counselor and resource person, especially in the UESI family, and also to give a lot of counseling sessions on premarital topics. So, Dr. Alexander George, we're very glad that we have you here in order to address this topic. Folks, as he speaks, if any questions keep popping up in your mind, please do note them, keep them ready, so that we can ask Dr. Alexander after his talk is done. We'll be having a time of Q&A after his talk. You can put it up in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and ask the question during the time of Q&A. Dr. Alexander George, we are very glad that we have you here. You're loaded with a lot of resources, and a person as a father of two daughters will be the most efficient person to talk on this. Dr. Alexander, over to you. It's your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So let me start sharing my screen. Am I audible?
Yes, doctor. Yeah, audible.
Thank you very much for those very kind words of introduction. My talk is going to be very short, but I hope that we will have a lot of discussion after this. So this Deborah Rice movement has already been introduced to you, and we have sort of different focus areas, and one focus area is the women empowerment cell. And today's topic, as has already been introduced, is dowry, the face of exploitation. So I'm going directly to the law, what the law says about dowry. In 1961, the Dowry Prohibition Act was made. And according to this act, it prohibits the giving or taking of dowry. So please note, giving is wrong, taking is wrong, both are wrong. And it does not prohibit the voluntary giving or receiving of unsolicited gifts. So when you see these two sentences hand in hand, you see all the loopholes whereby dowry continues to be a menace in spite of the act having been promulgated, way back in 1961. So as long as there is a voluntary giving or receiving of unsolicited gifts, it does not come under the category of dowry. However, there is a clause there that even unsolicited gifts, we must maintain a register for such gifts. That is very often not done in reality, but this is what the law says, or the law requires. So notice that giving or taking of dowry is wrong. That is very clearly stated in the law. However, the law does not prohibit voluntary giving or receiving of unsolicited gifts. And it is in that loophole that the menace of dowry continues to take place in some parts of India. Now, the Supreme Court later brought in some more clarifications. They said that no present made at the time of marriage to either party in the form of cash, ornaments, clothes, or other articles will be deemed dowry unless it was made as a consideration for the wedding. So you see, another clause has been brought in now. Now, gifts can be exchanged, but the crux of the issue is whether it was something that was important in considering whether this marriage should go forward or not. So that has become the crux of the issue. Was it a precondition for the marriage to take place? Or after the marriage has taken place, is this a continued expectation on the part of the groom's family or the groom that the bride would give cash or ornaments or landed assets or something? So this, whether it was a precondition or whether it has continued to be an expectation, this is now really the crux of the issue upon which the law seems to be operating. So the Dowry Prohibition Act has actually failed to curb the menace of dowry because the girl's parents fear that the girl's welcome and status in the boy's home is dependent on the quantity of these gifts. So out of that fear, the girl's parents give in large sums because they want to ensure that their daughter is safe, comfortable, respected in the boy's home. So it is sometimes this fear that promotes the parents to give and give very handsomely. Now, the second issue is the girl sometimes fears that if she does not take what she gets now, she may never get her due share later on. So that sometimes motivates the girl to ensure that whatever she can get from her parents, she takes with her, because later on, if she makes the demand or she makes a request that she would like a share of the family property, that may not be given to her. So these are the two things that sometimes continue to allow this problem to exist. Now, because of this, there are some evil trends in our society. One of them is that the men or the groom's party keep shopping around for the girl who would bring large sum of money, gold, and land assets. This is an evil trend. And even after the marriage has taken place, sometimes, or even before, squeezing the bride's parents to get all that you can from out of them. You know, there is a verse in Acts chapter 2, chapter 8, verse 22. In the context of money, it actually says, repent therefore of this wickedness of yours and pray that the Lord, if possible, the intent of your heart may be forgiven. So I want you to notice how the word of God not only condemns the act, but even the motivation behind or the intent of the heart is something very important in this. So what exactly are you thinking in your heart is known to God, and this verse actually is a call to repentance, because God knows what the intention of your heart is. Now, because of these evil trends, there are some consequences. You know, some women remain unmarried simply because their parents are not able to give the dowry demanded for. And some women become victims of harassment after marriage on dowry related issues. So this is the sad thing that Jobin was referring to, that, you know, many times it continues to be a problem. Now, again, it can happen that the dowry money is transferred to the husband's name, and as a result, the wife has no assets in her name. So even though she or her family has given a lump sum money, you know, that amount is not in her name, so she continues to be sort of without any assets, without any value. And domestic abuse and violence is sometimes used as a bargaining instrument even after marriage. So even after the marriage has taken place, women whose families may have paid a smaller amount suffer increased risk of marital abuse and violence. You know, the abuse may not be physical, it may be emotional, it may be mental, it may be verbal, it may be, you know, putting down. So all these forms of abuse may take place, and the context of that abuse may be dowry related issues. And sometimes additional dowry is paid to stop, uh, sorry, to stop the husband from abusing the wife. Now, what should a woman do when she faces such domestic violence? I hope this group will address that issue in various ways. I think DRM is one forum which has come up primarily to address domestic violence. So what can DRM do? We know that there are many here in DRM who are uniquely trained and qualified and experienced to deal with domestic violence issues, domestic abuse. So I would like you to find answers to this question. And I believe it is important to precipitate the issue. If somebody is undergoing abuse, it need not be because of dowry, it may be because of some other reason. I don't think it's right for the woman or the man to keep the issue under the blankets and keep silent about it and suffer. It must be brought up, it must be precipitated. I hope those things will come up in our discussion. So now, under the Indian Penal Code, section 498A, this section actually covers all cases in which the wife is subjected to mental or physical harassment by her husband or his relative. So it may be by the husband himself or any one of his relatives, with a view of coercing the woman or any person related to her. So it need not be the wife, it may be the wife's relatives. So to meet the unlawful demand for dowry, property, or valuable security. So this section of the Indian Penal Code deals with these type of issues. So it is not with not only the husband, it can be the husband's relative, it can be, and it need not be that the woman or the wife is being forced. It may be somebody related to the wife's father or mother or brother, and any such unlawful demand for dowry, property, or valuable security, those issues are addressed in this section. Now, according to a Supreme Court ruling, even if there is no specific charge framed in the case, if a case is going on and if there is no specific charge against dowry harassment stated in the case, but if evidence proves that harassment and cruelty has taken place, then the courts can convict an accused for dowry harassment and cruelty, even though that was not there when the case was framed. So the punishment can be up to 3 years of imprisonment and fine. Now, again, section 304 of the Indian Penal Code, in the first 7 years of marriage, if the wife dies under suspicious circumstances, the case will be charged as a dowry death. And every year in India, on an average, around 7,000 deaths take place related to the issue of dowry. So this is no small number. In some years, it is more than 7,000. Some years, it may be slightly less. But in the recent past few years, on an average, it has been 7,000 deaths. So if this is the number of dowry deaths, you must assume how many cases would be there where harassment is taking place, and how many cases would be there where harassment is taking place but has not been reported. So it may not be very evident in society that this is a real issue, but this really is an issue where in India it is a problem. Now, there are a few cases where this law has been misused. One particular case in 2003, Nisha Sharma, she accused her prospective groom, Munshi Dalal, of demanding dowry. And because of her forthrightness or her willingness to bring up that issue, Nisha was portrayed as a youth icon and a role model for other women. However, in 2012, the court acquitted all the accused because Nisha had actually fabricated the dowry charges in order to wriggle out of the wedding. So this type of misuse also takes place, but they are very stray instances like that. So now, what does the Bible say on this matter? We need to go and search the Bible and find out what the Bible says. In the Old Testament, it was always the bridegroom who paid the bride price. So you can see in Genesis 24, Isaac's case is mentioned there. Jacob's case is in Genesis 34. In the Mosaic law also, Exodus 22 verse 17, we have an indication of the bride price to be paid. And in 1 Samuel 18, we read about David. So, all these cases in the Old Testament, it was the bridegroom who had to pay the bride price. Now, what happens in the New Testament? Now, in the New Testament, Acts chapter 20, verse 28 states that the church of God which he hath purchased with his own blood. So here again, we are told about Jesus Christ as the heavenly bridegroom. He had to pay the bride price, which was his own blood, to purchase the bride, the church. So if you want to be biblical, I think, guys, you need to pay the bride price. So that is what the Old Testament says. That is what the New Testament says. So now let's consider, does not the daughter have certain rights? Let's consider that issue. Now, during his lifetime, a father can choose to give a portion of his wealth to his children as and when he pleases. And that portion need not be an equal share. The father can choose how much he wants to give or whether or not he wants to give. As long as he is alive, he can choose to do so. In the event of his death, if the father has left a legally registered will, then the inheritance has to be distributed as per that will. So this is how the law goes. So during his lifetime, the father can decide whether or not to give his children a portion or whether it should be given equally or not. All these decisions a father has the right to take. Now, suppose he dies and he has left a registered will, legally registered will, then the inheritance has to be distributed according to that will. Now, when is the daughter eligible for an equal share? This is known as the Mary Roy case. Many of you may know Mary Roy's daughter, Arundhati Roy, who was an award-winning author. So Arundhati Roy's mother is Mary Roy, and she took up this case with the Supreme Court, and as a result of her fighting it out, the court has legislated or decided that if the father has not left a registered will, then the daughters are eligible to an equal portion of the father's property as the sons. So it is when the father has not left a registered will, and if he passes away, then according to the law, the sons and daughters are eligible for an equal share of the father's property. So therefore, an equal share is not a right that the bridegroom's party can ask for. If it is the parents' choice to give or not to give gifts to their children. So what I'm saying is that these rights are not necessarily rights. They are rights only after the father has passed away and no registered will is there. Then an equal share is a right that we can ask for or fight for. So essentially, share is not a right as long as the parents are alive. To demand for share is actually to choose the prodigal son's way. We all know the story of the prodigal son in the Bible. And when we demand for a share from our father, it is actually choosing the prodigal son's way. But if your parents have bequeathed some wealth to you, it lawfully belongs to you and your generations. And suppose that wealth or that property is now wrongly in another person's possession, you have the moral responsibility to claim it for you and for your generations. I hope you understood this point. That is, if your parents have bequeathed some wealth to you, it lawfully belongs to you and to your children. And if that wealth now is under the possession of somebody else, you must take hold of it. If necessary, you may have to go to the court to get it. So that is a moral responsibility, and there is absolutely no wrong in doing so. Now, what should be the believer's stand? So Dowry should never be a consideration for or against a proposal. This is what I would like to highlight. That should never be a matter brought into consideration. Voluntary, unsolicited gifts can be exchanged by either party. There is no ban against that. The marriage expenditure may be shared but without any obligation or expectation. These things must be done voluntarily and without expectation. So such gifts should never be considered as a right, and failure to give or not to give, these should not be considered as a dereliction of duty. So this is the slide in which I am presenting what a believer's stand should be. Now, what can you do as a man? I think you should make it very clear to your folks that dowry will not be a matter of consideration at all, at any stage. And it is important for you to do this well in advance, not at the time when marriage proposals come up for consideration. Make it clear to your parents that you don't want the issue of dowry to be brought up for discussion at all at any point of time. But you can accept unsolicited gifts without expectation. There is nothing wrong in that. That should be accepted with grace and with love and with gratitude. Now, what can you do as a woman? Now, in my daughter's profile, I have two daughters, and when I put up their matrimonial profile in matrimonial sites like M4Marry or Bharat Matrimonial, it was clearly stated that only those with a zero dowry commitment need express interest. It was very, very clearly stated there. And I'm happy to say that that is exactly what happened. I was very clear in my mind that if this issue was brought up at any point of time during the negotiations, I would have shown them to the door. But that never had to happen because it was not brought up, because my stand I had made clear upfront. Now I believe that this is what women should do. This is what fathers of daughters should do. We should be the one who call the shots. Now both of my daughters are happily married. So what I'm concluding in saying is that guys and girls, you must have the spine to say no to dowry. The guys must be able to do it. The girls must be able to do it. Parents on both sides must be able to do it. And let us remember a verse in Job chapter 22, verse 25, which says that the Almighty God, He is our gold and silver and our strength. All the riches that we have can go in a split second. And God alone is our fortress. He alone is our strength. Let our trust be in God and not in our wealth or in our landed property or assets. So now the session is actually open for discussion, and you can post your questions in the chat box, and probably relevant questions will be read out. And if you want something, please raise your hand. I'm sure Jobin will be able to recognize you and maybe unmute you. But before you state a question, please introduce yourself, your name and where you are from. Before we open up into the discussion, I'm going to present a case because I want to try to sort of promote some discussion. So I'm just going to have one slide. So I want you to think, and those of you who have an opinion on that, please put your opinion on the chat box. So this is the case that I'm, Mary and Jacob. These names are pseudonames. Mary is a well-qualified woman, and she is married to a reasonably well-employed man, Jacob. No dowry was sought for by Jacob's family. no dowry was paid by Mary's family. Mary is treated as a second-class citizen in Jacob's home. All the money that Jacob earns is used for the extended family. So what has gone wrong in this case? I'm leaving the slide
Something.
and I want to ask you to respond in so as to promote discussion. You see, in this case, no dowry was sought for, no dowry was given. Mary is a qualified woman. Her husband is very well employed, but Mary is treated as a second-class citizen in that family. All that her husband earns is actually given to the extended family, and Mary has very little say over her husband's income. Has anything gone wrong? Okay, so the session is open for discussion. I think I'll stop sharing and
I'm K.C. Rajan from Kerala, from a small town, Pallikara.
Okay.
As you said in Old Testament, it is said that the male has to give money to the father. But I came across in Joshua, in chapter 15, verse 16 onwards, it's about Caleb.
Mhm.
Caleb says, whoever attacks Kiriath Sefer and takes it to him, I will give my daughter Aksa as wife. Othniel, son of Kenaz, brother of Caleb, took it, and he gave him his daughter Aksa as wife. When she came to him, she urged him to ask her father for a field. As she dismounted from her donkey, Caleb said to her, what do you wish? She said to him, give me a present, since you have set me in the land of the Negev. Give me springs of water as well. So Caleb gave her the upper springs and the lower springs. Is it coming under the purview of dowry?
Yes, a good question. I mean, I must go to that passage and study it again. But was it a discussion between the husband and the wife? And you have the passage before you, Joshua chapter 15.
The daughter of Caleb is urging her husband to ask,
Okay.
but she herself asked.
Mm-hmm.
That is the situation. So it is against the law written by Moses,
Yes. So
the
I
law
don't.
given by Lord.
Yeah, I understand this thing. I'm just trying to understand the context. Was it really for the marriage to take place or after the marriage took place?
No, it's
Something.
after the marriage.
Yeah. So whether
She
it
is asking her share from
yes,
her
yes,
father.
yes, I understand. Anyway, it's a very good observation. I will keep that in mind. I would encourage others also to contribute.
Thank you.
Uncle, if you, Mr. Dr. Alexander, if
Yes,
you see the
yes.
chat box, a few people have responded saying,
Okay.
to the Mary and Jacob's case that he put. So Ben-Hur said, the thought is that the money belongs to the husband and not to the wife, and therefore no rights for her, and because the wife is not earning. So that is Ben-Hur's thoughts. And
No, so let just hold on. So the point the participant has made is that it was wrong for or Mary should have felt that the money was hers also. Am I right, Jobit?
I'm not sure because
Why? I mean, would you read that once again?
yes, I'll read it again. The thought is that the money belongs to the husband and not to the wife, and therefore no rights for her because the wife is not earning.
Okay, so somebody, I think Ben Hur is asking if he could speak. Maybe he will clarify. Would you unmute him?
Yes, Ben.
Okay, thank you. My name is Benha Paul. I'm from Nasik in Maharashtra. So the idea is she is a well qualified woman and her husband is also earning, but she is not earning. So since she is not earning, that is not her money, and she has no rights to use it. It's her husband and her family. That may be the thought process in their extended family.
Yes, Ben Hur. So is that a right thought process or is it a wrong
No,
thought
wrong.
process?
It is wrong. It is wrong.
Okay, that's what I wanted to highlight.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ben.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Alexander.
Welcome.
We got a few more person. There, one person has personally texted me saying, "I've heard people from the boys' side say that the parents can give their daughters gifts. Is this an indirect dowry expectation?"
Well, that's why I said, the intent of your heart is known to God, so I took a verse from the book of Acts. So, the verse says that, God knows your intentions. So if your intention is really to get the money from your wife's parents, even though you don't state it as openly as you may have wanted to, then that intention itself is wrong in God's sight. Yes, so somebody has stated now intentions and attitude matters for God. Very
Yes.
truly.
Yes. Yes.
Jobin, continue to state what has been stated in the chat box. I'm not able to read it because I'm using my cell phone.
Yes, doctor. I'm reading that out. A person named Shakti has said that well qualified, that the statement should not go into her head. Jacob's failure to manage his house, Jacob fails to stand for her, leads to complications.
Yes,
So
so there again, Shakti, right? Shakti, you stated it? Yes, so Shakti's point is that, there is a directive in the Bible that the man should leave the father and mother and cleave unto his wife. And this has probably not taken place there sufficiently. So the wife doesn't feel to be the queen in the house, even after the marriage has taken place. So she feels just the opposite of that. She feels a second-class citizen there. So there the husband has really failed in his duty. Yes, something has come up.
yes,
Would you read that?
yes. A person named Manna has given 3 cases. In some cases, A, girl's family are aggressive on wanting to give dowry even if the boy's family doesn't want or is not interested. Case B, some girl's family look down upon boy's family when they don't take it. And the case C that Manna has just put up saying that girls bringing a lot of jewels start placing the hope on it and all their life as such as problems to be submissive as a prudent wife should be.
Very good observation. Manna is in fact one of our senior counselors in DRM.
Okay.
Well, I'm asking this DRM family, where are all the ladies? I want you to speak up. It seems that only the men are speaking up. So please raise your voices. This is your forum.
Can I read it out again? How does the girl's side understand what the intentions are from the boy's side, even if they do say that they do not want dowry?
It is very, very difficult to understand the true character and intentions of the other party. It is extremely hard. So it is usually only after 2 or 3 years we begin to understand what their intentions actually were. That is the unfortunate reality. However, if we study about that family and ask many people and all that, we may be able to understand that are they people after money? Are they people who, but even then our conclusions may not be true to reality. It may be only after the marriage takes place that the true intentions may come to light. And I believe that when those intentions come to light, the woman should precipitate the issue rather than shrugging it away, so that it is very clear that she is not going to take these intentions lightly. She is going to precipitate them even if it involves a cost.
Thank you, Doctor. We've got one comment from the person named GP. It says, everyone agrees that when a man marries a woman, they are one. That unity must include everything, be it physical, spiritual, open communications, and including decision processes and even money. This is the comment given by GP.
Yes, the two become one, but the problem is which one. I'm cracking a joke on that. That is, the two become one, but still the struggle goes on. Which one? Do I become more like my husband, or do I become more like my wife? So the struggle really continues. Thank you for that comment. Yes, I think Vinita Patnaik has posted something on the chat box.
Yes, first she said it's good to understand the male perspective. And she also has stated that, well, the case study cited basically talks about the patriarchy clearly bearing a greater role in the family. That's why Mary is treated as a second class citizen.
Okay, so Vinita is saying that the cause is the patriarchal culture in which we live in. Yes, so Vinita, can you help us to find out what Mary should do? Not necessarily Vinita, anybody else could also contribute. Shalini Suran is also a senior counselor in DRM. She has stated something.
Yes, her question is it culture oriented? Is Mary's case culture oriented?
Yes, to a great degree. That is, I think, what Vinita was also mentioning, the patriarchal culture. So just because our culture is that way, should we submit to the culture or should we live counterculture?
Thank you. Doctor, can I read out a question that was put up by a person called Chaco a little earlier? He says, why don't we stick to the biblical principle of the groom bringing the bridal price? And I also want to add that, add a little bit to that. Do you promote the idea of bridal price?
Well, I would be glad if that happens, so that I think a counter-cultural initiative may probably bring things back to where things ought to be. I'm not saying that I promote bride price, but I think when such a thing happens, then probably we will get back to where we ought to be.
Thank you. And that same Chaco, that person has stated, bridal price is biblical.
Yes, I agree. In the New Testament and in the Old Testament, I have cited versions for that. But C.K. Rajan has brought up a verse from Joshua, which we will have to go back and study once again. Yeah. I think I saw a chat from Subi Joe Verghese.
Subi John. But meanwhile, Joy Kulangara is a person who is raising his hand. Joy, okay. Can you please unmute and speak?
Hello, this is Joy Kulangara. I work in Liverpool, UK. I got this, invite through EMF. Is one of the Christian group in Ernakulam. But anyway, it's following Chaco's comment about biblical. If that is the case, women should not speak in public as well, according to Bible. But we are in an equal society where men and women. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, men and women are equal, whether it is public speaking. So I think we should consider that in monetary case as well. That's my view.
Okay, nice to have you in from Liverpool. It makes our Zoom meeting quite international. Thank you, and thank you for that comment. Definitely, we take it as a perspective. I'm sure that there are people who agree with it and there are people who disagree with it here in this group too.
Sure. Yeah. The Shakti, the person who commented earlier, said the girl also should emotionally cling to her family and fail to adopt herself in husband's family. There will not be power struggle when God is the center of the family.
I agree with the last part to some extent, that the closer we get to God, but it is not sufficient for one of the partners alone to get closer to God. If both the husband and wife are submissive to God and closer to God, the power struggles would reduce. There is an emotional leaving both for the man and for the woman, because the primary relationship is between the husband and the wife, and that is where the bonding should be maximized. And there is an element of emotional living that should take place both for the wife as well as for the husband.
Cool. Thank you, Doctor. We have one more comment from Mr. Suvi John. The leaving and cleaving should be very clearly made once married. Jacob has failed in this. As believers, we should depend upon God as our provider and not parents or others. The difference in perspectives of the people involved in this case, Jacob, his parents, add to this.
Yes, taking what Subi has stated forward, I would recommend that girls, before the marriage take place, would ask their prospective spouses, how do you intend to practice biblical leaving? And a response to that question should give the girl some insight on how the guy is going to take matters forward.
Cool. Thank you, Doctor. We got a comment from Vinita, which says one thing Mary can do is to be more assertive, take on one active role, maybe take a job that ensures her self-respect, which would then break this cycle of patriarchy.
Yes. So assertiveness. So this is exactly where I wanted to come to. What should the woman do when she is experiencing abuse, verbal, emotional, physical, or mental? And the answer now we have received is that she should become more assertive. When a woman becomes assertive, is that considered unchristian? Was Jesus Christ assertive, and yet was he humble? Is being humble counter to being assertive? Yes, I did notice a comment saying that this is a very polished form of feminism. I'm sorry, it is not. We at DRM are not feminists at all. We declare that we are not feminists, and so we do not go by that. Go ahead, Jobin.
Yes, Sharon has commented saying, in case there is a proposal, and if I have not mentioned about the dowry in my profile, uh, in case I have not mentioned about the dowry in my profile, how do I bring up the conversation on dowry and my conviction about this with the guy? Or should this be a discussion only between the parents of the girl and the guy?
No, I think in my slides, I presented that the guy and the girl, I believe, should make this stand very clear before marriage is being considered by the family. Very early, make your stand clear to your parents, whether you're a girl or a boy, and make sure that they include this in the profile so that it is stated upfront, just as I did for my daughter's cases. Now, if you haven't done that in your profile, definitely you should bring it up in the discussion, and you should insist on an extended time of conversation before you make the final commitment to marry.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. We've got another comment from GP which says their marriage, that is Jacob's and Mary's marriage, should have waited for a few more weeks, sorted this issue, and got married. How is it practical?
I don't think even if they had waited for a few weeks, they would have been able to Mary or her family would have been able to decipher that this is what she is going to face in her husband's home. Instead, alternatively, I would have suggested that Mary would have insisted on her husband that the marriage, let us live in a separate home. Physical leaving actually facilitates financial, emotional, and headship leaving. When Jacob and Mary, if they had been living in a separate home, Mary would have been the queen in that house. Jacob would have been the king. And the in-laws, both sides, Mary's side as well as Jacob's sides, would have been kept at a hand's distance. And I think that is biblical. There are exceptions. There are cases when you have to take your parents under your roof and take care of them. There are exceptions. I agree.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Doctor. Philip has said the bride herself is dowry. Any young man who makes dowry a condition to marriage discredits his education and his country and dishonors womanhood.
Very true. I say amen to that.
Powerful statement. Yeah. Joe has said, thank you, Alex Uncle, for the thoughtful presentation. What is the role of the church? The churches should be more vocal than silent on this matter, right?
Definitely. I wish the churches would excommunicate those who gave and took dowry. Then things would be far better.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Actually, right before we started off this discussion, someone had asked notes of your presentation. How do we?
I'm willing to share my slides, so I can give it to somebody who would transfer it to, or if needed, I can give my email ID, or I don't know what is the right thing to do. Maybe I'll put my email ID in the chat box.
Yeah, I think can fine. Or do you want to tell it out to me, Doctor, so that I can just type it out?
Oh, okay, Alex, ALEX,
Yeah.
SOLY, S for sun, Sydney,
Yeah.
SOL, L for London,
Yeah.
and Y for yellow.
Yeah.
So Alex is my name, Soli is my wife's name, alexsoli@gmail.com.
Okay. I like the way you you set up your Gmail account too. Cool. Yes, Sunil, Mr. Sunil has been raising his hand for a while. I'm sorry, Mr. Sunil. Over to you. You can talk.
Yeah, 2 points. I think many people, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. When people say that, oh, we only want to give a gift, this is not dowry, the girls' party. As you said, we cannot really discern the intention. Now, the question is, why should the guy accept it at that time? Because it is very difficult to. He should not accept. Few years later, if he wants, whatever, that's fine. So, because I don't think we can ever discern whether it is out of pressure or it is out of, voluntary thing. Now, the second thing is, you see, I think this dowry thing can be resolved only if the inheritance thing is also resolved. So, when a girl child is not given part of her inheritance, when Indian people say that only guys will receive inheritance, then what does the girl receive? So sometimes some families say that this is her inheritance. So we give it at the time of marriage. And the guy will get the whatever house or whatever, those things. Now, my own suggestion is that we must regard our children equally and we must equally divide our property to them. Then this whole issue of dowry thing and giving at that time, and then people asking how much share will your daughter receive, tell us, give us some guarantee and all those things, that would go off. What do you say, sir?
Yes, I think whatever suggestions you have made are very pragmatic suggestions, very good suggestions. The first part of it was that, the husband, if the parents of the girl want to give something to the girl, it should be in her name, and her husband or her husband's family need not even know about it. That is in her name. So that is how it should be done. In fact, that is how my father-in-law gave something to my wife, and I was unaware of it until many, many years later. The fixed deposit matured, and then my wife told me this is what my father gave me. So that is how it ought to be. Secondly, as you said, the division of the inheritance. Yes, girls, sons and daughters should actually get an equal share. And it is parents' responsibility to ensure that the inheritance is rightly divided, justly divided to the children in such a manner that there is no complaint at all. This is very important. Parents must do this very judiciously. And if they do that well in advance, they would in fact preclude any issues on this whole topic of dowry. I think we have
Sir,
come to
even-
our end. Yeah. I think I see the clock as becoming 8 o'clock,
Yeah.
but the discussion continues. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. Sir, even the whole issue of the girls' party need to give money for the cost of the the function, the marriage function. Now, 23 years earlier, when I got married, when I told my father that about not taking dowry and not even taking it if they gave it, then the question which my father at that time said, what about the cost? So by the grace of God, the logic which I told my father was, if we are conducting a birthday party, will we take money from the neighbors to conduct birthday party? It is our joy. We must spend. So if we are doing it, we must spend. Why we are taking from the girl to express our joy of getting married? So I feel that's a very bad thing to even take money from others to, do the function. And
Yes, I used to say when I take premarital sessions that I have a standing offer that I will officiate your wedding for 1,000 rupees. I will just give you black tea and biscuits. So people should be willing to scale down on marriage expenditure instead of asking the bride's parents to incur the expenditure. We should take a very strong stance on these issues. I know one brother, Jose Thomas, who is part of DRM, his wedding also was conducted in such an exemplary manner by, limiting the costs.
So that we can save the time. Yeah. So Vinita, ma'am, she has again commented saying that more so as women and mothers, we need to teach our sons to respect women. And I like the advertisement of Airtel where the mom asks the son to help her in washing the clothes and even taunts his sister to come up and help her in the task. That is Vinita's comment. And Subi has added further saying that, can you talk about steps that the wife needs to take when there are dowry issues? Generally in North India, even in Christian families, I've heard of cases where the woman has been abused physically due to dowry issues. The woman is encouraged to go stay in her in-laws' place in spite of life-threatening harassment and should bear this. And she ultimately committed suicide since she has reached a point where she could not bear it any longer. So what steps can a woman take in this situation?
That's a big question, but I would respond very briefly. Number one, call the helpline of DRM. After having done that, call the police, the pink police, and in Kerala we say the women police. We need to precipitate issues. So I think women should be more vocal on these issues. Now, I don't want everybody to get the impression that men are not victims. There are families when men are being abused also. We will bring up that for another day's discussion. So definitely we are not feminists. We also want to address men who are abused.
Yes. Okay. Shakti has further commented saying that I remember one of our graduates from Vijayawada in EU used to give open call during his message and ask the graduates who want to take dowry and ask them to stand in line so that he can clap them one after the other. Oh my goodness. Okay.
Yes, yes. Some extreme steps need to be taken to make our young people come out of their complacency. So maybe that's one step to do.
Sure. Okay. Now, Vinita ma'am has again commented saying that Jesus was authoritative, at the same time very assertive. We have instances where when he was questioned before Pilate, are you the king of the Jews? His reply was, you said it. So he was assertive and authoritative at the same time.
Yes, we need to be like Jesus. There are times when we need to be assertive. Jesus called out to the king and Herod and said, tell that fox. He called out the Pharisees and the Sadducees of his time and said, whitewashed sepulchres. So, in meekness and humility, let us be like Jesus. but let us be assertive when it comes to living counterculture lives in this world. I think we will close our discussion with this few words that I have now said. I encourage all of you to live counterculture in this world.
Sure. Thank you, Doctor. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes. We've got a good bunch of participants. Thank you all for taking your time to be a part of this discussion today evening. Dr. Alexander George, thank you once again for your valuable information that you've shared. I hope that all of us will take steps to build one another and educate one another on these issues so that we can make this world a better place where his kingdom is visible. Thank you all for taking your time. Thank you for joining.